lot of people have questions about propane when it comes to Generacs. So we've put this video together. I'm John from Green Star Power, and this here is Blaine.
Hi people, I'm friends with John for over 20 years and I'm a gas technician level 2 in Ontario, Canada here. And as a gas technician level 2, we're allowed to work on all kinds of appliances up to 400,000 BTU, doing maintenance, installation, various different work on them. I'll be here with John doing this video talking about how these tanks, the generators work with the propane equipment.
All right, so Blaine, first question. The tanks that I have behind me, they're called 100 gallons, but they're actually 118 gallons each. How big or how much propane do you really need when you're just running a generator?
So as a rule of thumb in Canada here, so we run, I think it's 10 liters per hour on a 20 kilowatt system.
Why do I need these big tanks? Why can't I just use a barbecue tank?
So when you're using a small barbecue tank, you end up with a vaporization problem. It'll cause the tanks to frost up and they will not allow the vapor to go through anymore. It'll turn into snow or frost, and you don't need that when you're doing this job. The only time you're going to need liquid or frosty stuff like that is when you're dealing with big BTU stuff, for example, vaporizers on corn dryers or stuff like that.
So this Generac behind us doesn't use liquid propane. The propane has to vaporize first.
That's right. They use a regulator to vaporize it. So the working pressure going over to that generator is about 2 psi. And in Canada, that's what we use.
It's real small.
What?
2 psi.
2 psig actually is the word for it. But in Canada, in the States, it would be the same because it's actually psig. It's pounds per square inch gravity. That's what the standard is for house, and then as you go to bigger capacities like commercial buildings and industrial, it actually goes up from there.
But when you fill these tanks, you're putting liquid in them.
Yeah, so we use liquid for transport because you can't transport a vapor.
It's like, yeah, you can't walk around with air.
That's right.
And so sometimes you see frost on tanks. What on the outside, what does that mean?
So the frosting on the tanks means that there probably is a draw of some sort that's causing it to vaporize inside, which is actually making your propane less efficient.
Okay. Are tanks like this dangerous?
Define dangerous. They're not a fire hazard because they have built-in safety features like a relief valve. So if the pressure gets too high, i.e. in the summer, like if you're dealing with 30 degree weather, so that would be like 80 or 90 degree Fahrenheit weather, or 100 degree weather at all times, there's a safety valve in there when it gets to a set pressure. And the tanks that we have behind us here, they're 25-year ASME tanks, so they have a pressure relief setting of 250 psig. So if anything gets to that level, they just activate and they're automatic and they only shut off once the pressure comes down.
So just a technical question then, the valve at the top regulates it to 2, what'd you call it?
2 psig.
2 psig, even though there's more pressure inside the tank. And if the pressure gets too high, the valve will release some propane.
That's right, because usually in those tanks, there's probably about 10 psig, if not more.
Okay.
So it's not the valve itself that regulates, it's the regulator. That's why it's called a regulator.
So some of our viewers in the United States, the southern United States, Texas, the Carolinas, Florida, they have natural gas, but they prefer to put in propane. Would you recommend that?
Yeah, because it's always good to have two sources of fuel around, because you never know what's going to happen, especially when you're dealing with a natural gas setting. Something could happen where the transmission lines could be severed and you're not going to get a maintenance crew out there. Whereas with propane, you always have the gas there.
So we're here in Canada, and usually there's a lot of snow. The power goes out, it's usually because of an ice storm or a snowstorm. What if my tanks aren't full? Am I going to be able to get them filled up?
So there will be no delay in delivery. The only delays that'll come is if the road maintenance crews don't get out and clean the roads, or if there's no access to the tanks. It just slows us down. We're always on the road 7 days a week, 12 hours, 13 hours a day, depending on the logs. And when it gets to an emergency scenario, we can be on the road up to 18, 20 hours. We maintain 24 hours sometimes too.
So how much propane, what if you can't get out, the roads are ice, and you might not get to a customer for 2 days? how many tanks should I only have 2, but you mentioned to me once that I should have 3.
Yeah, and the third tank is actually just a safety net, just for that odd chance, because sometimes around where we live, we're in a forested area. Getting down some roads, they're not accessible. Like we live in the region we live in, there's mountains, there's a lot of trees, and when trees come down on the road and the power utility can't get out and remove them, or the roads crews can't clear them, that'll cause a delay in delivery. But if it's just snow, I've never ever refused to deliver to someone in the 12 years I delivered propane, so that's not a factor.
Blaine, another question about tanks. These tanks here I've got them sitting above grade. What's the difference between having buried tanks versus tanks like these?
So having buried tanks, the only advantage that I've ever seen with those is you can put them underground. They're out of sight, out of mind, and they're a little more security for when there is environmental factors at play. There's absolutely no difference between the two of them.
What about with vaporizing, with the fuel vaporizing? Is one better than the other?
No, they're both the same. They have the exact same properties, same engineering. Everything is the same.
Okay. All right, so Blaine, we live in Eastern Ontario. We get a lot of snow. What do we need to do as homeowners to maintain the tanks?
So as a homeowner, you just need to maintain access to them at all times. Actually, it's a code to have access to them. You want to be able to keep them clean of snow, clean of debris, anything in the road, like trees, down trees, snow specifically. You want to maintain a path so it makes delivery more efficient. As far as snow on top of the tanks, not an issue.
What? I thought, what if there's ice over the valve? I hear that, they have to be able to vent, no?
Yeah, so the tanks need to breathe because it's metal. It's snow up and down the sides of the tank is where it doesn't need to be. Under the cover specifically, it doesn't make a difference. We can get an access to the filler valve because all we need to fill them is the filler valve and the bleeder.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
What about the vent?
I don't need the vent.
You don't need, yeah, but don't they have to be able to vent?
Nope. They need to breathe.
Oh, they need to breathe.
Yeah, the vent has no bearing when it's cold.
Oh, I suppose. So somebody told me that you only fill these tanks to 80%. Is that true?
Yeah, as a rule of thumb, it's always to 80%. Sometimes the gauges will show 85 or 90%. They're not actually showing that. By code, you fill by the bleeder. So the gauges are inaccurate because they're on a float arm, and sometimes the float arm will raise. And by the time it resettles down, it could be 30 seconds, it could be 2 minutes, it could be 20 minutes.
They can get stuck too, I guess.
And they get stuck, yeah.
Okay. So I have a monitoring system on my tanks. How does that work?
So the monitoring system works on a GPS system where it sends a signal to a dispatch software indicating a certain percentage in the tanks, and it'll actually dispatch the truck to go do the delivery. It keeps track of that dial that you're never supposed to use. It's more of a reference point than it is anything else.
Are you on YouTube, Blaine?
Yes, I'm on YouTube. I'm under 50.
I'm not under 50. So we love comments. Go ahead. Remember, please like the video. And if you want information about Green Star Power, visit our website. Also, subscribe to our channel, and there's a link to another video in our channel. Have a good day.
Bye.